All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about something huge, something that affects pretty much everything, and that's how the world's most vital resources are spread out. Or, maybe more accurately, how they aren't spread out evenly at all. We're talking about global resource inequality. I want you to just think for a second about your day so far. Did you have a coffee, take a shower, turn on a light? Yeah? Well, you've already used food, water, and energy. We kind of take it for granted, right? But what if you couldn't? What if those things just weren't guaranteed? Because for millions of people around the world, that's their reality. Every single day. And this is where things get really wild. It's the central paradox we need to wrap our heads around. You see, the world doesn't actually have a scarcity problem. We have enough. The problem is, it's a distribution problem. We've got all this stuff, but it's just not in the right places for the right people. So what does global resource inequality actually mean? Well, at its core, it's just this: the wildly uneven way that essential stuff, like food, water, and energy, is scattered across the globe. It creates these massive imbalances. Some places have way, way more than they need, while other places are in a constant state of not having enough. All right, so let's tackle the first big one: food. I mean, it doesn't get much more personal than that, right? And when you look at the global picture, it's really like a tale of two completely different diets. Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we need a starting point, a baseline. Most health experts agree the average adult needs somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day to be healthy. Just kind of keep that number in your head. Now check this out. This is where you really see the surplus in action. In a country like the United States, the average person is consuming more than 3,600 calories a day. That's, over 1,000 calories more than recommended every single day. That's a huge, huge surplus. And this imbalance, it's got serious consequences. And not just on one side. It's a two-sided coin. Where there's too much, you see these major health problems: obesity, heart disease, that put a huge strain on the healthcare system. And where there's too little, well, that's where you find undernutrition, which leads to weaker immune systems, lower productivity. It just grinds the economy to a halt. And it gets even more complicated. You think, okay, simple, let's just move the food from where there's a lot to where there's not enough, right? But trying to fix the problem creates another one. We end up shipping food all over the planet. These are called food miles. And all that transport, the ships, the trucks, the planes, they all burn fossil fuels, pump out CO2, and yep, that just adds to climate change. Okay, so that's food. Now let's switch gears to our next essential resource: water. And with water, things get a little more nuanced. It's not always as simple as, it just doesn't rain enough. There are actually two very different kinds of water scarcity. And this breaks it down really nicely. You've got what's called physical scarcity, which is pretty much what it sounds like. There just isn't enough water around. But then you have economic scarcity, which is a whole different ballgame. That's when the water is there, but for whatever reason, people just can't get to it. So, physical scarcity, that's a problem of nature, right? Think about super dry, arid places like the Sahara Desert. There's just not enough rain or natural water sources to meet everyone's needs. It's a simple case of supply and demand, dictated by the environment. But economic scarcity, man, that's a totally different story. That's a human-made problem, and it affects over 1 billion people. Imagine this. The water is right there, maybe deep underground in an aquifer. But if you don't have the money for drills, for wells, for pipes, for all that infrastructure, that water might as well be on Mars. The resource is there, but poverty puts a wall around it. All right, last but definitely not least, let's talk about energy. This is the resource that literally fuels everything. It powers our homes, our industries, our development, and this is where we see what's called the global energy gap. So just take a quick look at where the world's fossil fuels are. It's pretty shocking how concentrated they are, right? The vast majority of oil, natural gas, and coal is located in just a few spots on the map. And what that means is a small number of countries have a massive amount of control over the world's energy supply. And here's why that concentration is such a big deal. As countries around the world start to grow and industrialize, their need for energy just skyrockets. I mean, it explodes. To give you some perspective, the average person in North America uses almost 15 times more energy than the average person in India. Think about that.
So as more of the world develops, this creates a crazy surge in demand, all putting pressure on those few places that hold the supply.
Okay, so we've covered food, we've covered water, we've covered energy. Let's zoom out now and look at the big picture. Why does all of this inequality actually matter so much? When it comes to food, the main takeaway is that it's a crisis on both ends of the spectrum. It's a problem of having way too little, for sure, but it's also a problem of having way, way too much. And with water, what we really need to remember is that scarcity isn't just about a place being dry. So often, it's about economics. The problem isn't always a lack of water, but a lack of access to it. And finally, energy. The huge gap between where the supply is and where the demand is growing, that's shaping our collective future. It's dictating who gets to develop, who holds the power, and what the world is going to look like for decades to come. So all of this, it leaves us with a pretty tough reality to face. We're all living on one planet with a limited amount of stuff. Yet we've created this world with a massive, growing gap between the haves and the have-nots. So the big question we all have to think about is, in a world like this, how do we even start to bridge that gap between surplus and scarcity?